All right, second day of LibertyCon. PiR8 Plunder. It was a pretty good day, long day. Started out with the Indie Resources panel, posted about them. A lot of experienced self-published authors, kind of giving the lowdown on some of the things that they were successful with and what worked for them, what didn't work for them. Outlined a lot of the pitfalls for the younger writers, stuff I kind of already knew and had already run across and thrown out of my lexicon of people I would ever deal with. But, words of caution for everybody, a couple of avenues to pursue and research, but just confirms that if you confirm this group confirmed that as a self-published independent writer, you can do okay. If you make the effort, do the things right you're supposed to do the stuff you're supposed to do, like write when you're supposed to write. But anyways, it was a great panel. After that, I went to my reading with Ms. or Mrs. Freeman. I used my white cis male, patriarchal kind of take on life, and I let ladies go first. So she read her a couple of snippets from her upcoming story, which was fun. She was also in a cow suit, which is different. It's her gig. It's her thing. It's very funny. It's very noticeable. So she's got her thing going. Then I read my Blood of Invidia chapter, which is on the feed here. And then after that was done, there was a little time left over, so I started a snippet out of the patched story. Only got to about a third of the way through, so anybody that wants to read the finish, got to become a subscriber on the website. But people liked what it was going. One of the guys figured out what it was all about. Came up to me afterwards like, I got this figured out. So, but the rest of the story, he hadn't read the rest of the story. So, anyways, that was kind of cool. Did an author alley, which is where you set up in kind of the front area to sell books. Sold a few books, met a few people, shook a few hands, gave away some cards. Kind of what I expected. It was very cool. After that, I went down to the meet and greet for the first timers. I've posted that about here. John Ringo led the conversation. He ran a really good panel. He kept control of the panel, kept the subjects moving along. It was all really good. I had a good time in there. And their discussions about LibertyCon. After that, I immediately had to shoot back upstairs to do another author alley, which I had 2 spots for. So I went ahead and sold some more books and met some more people. Passed out some more of my really cool. Oh man, I don't have them here with me at the table. The bookmarks that I do that have you've seen them, that have the wax seal on them. So people were kind of appreciative of those and they liked those. So right after that, I went downstairs to be on the panel writing with a co-author. That was fun. Of course, Morgan and I win the distance measurement because nobody's working with somebody from Australia. So, we win the long distance co-author thing. But I found a common thread with the guys that were still, even in the States, doing stuff through Dropbox and, taking the lead on the project and kind of backing off, and then everybody taking the things that make them shine, grabbing their portion of the writing. And then they talked about blending too, which is something that I kind of did with ours, where you tried to blend my writing into his writing and his writing into my writing as they come together, and then sprinkle snippets from both into other parts of the book, so it becomes harder and harder for the reader to tell when one author took over from the other author. And that's the end goal. They have an idea, but they're not sure. And that's when the story gets really good. So anyways, it was great on that panel. I met a few more people. Went to the good, the bad, and the ugly of writing advice. This was a panel with publishers. And there was a kind of some I'm not saying mid-market, the small press authors there, but the guys from Bain were there, and they talked about submittals and all that. I'm not probably going to go the published route with a publisher. I mean, nobody's knocking at my door or anything, so I've got no illusions about that. But it's just such a pain in the ass to deal with, and I just have to see the value in them, because again, I can do my own covers now. I can find someone to do my covers. I can do my own editing, not me personally, but I find an editor. So the real big piece that they bring to the pie is the marketing, and a lot of the publishing houses are leaning heavily on the author to do their own marketing again. And then I'm back to, what are you doing for your 40%? Not that it's specific, very specific publishers knocked on my door, I wouldn't be very interested. Because of how they treat the people that they work with. But a majority of them, if they knocked on my door, I'd be like, what are you going to do for me? And they can't answer with a good question or good answer. But I learned a little bit more about their submittal process and all that good stuff. I went to another panel after that called Rise of the Fae. Got a little weird. Wasn't kind of what I expected, but it was what it was. It was about magic beings and all that good stuff from kind of a more esoteric point of view versus a writing point of view as far as I was concerned. But it was what it was. Then my panel came up, which was 500 Vampires No Waiting. That was fun. The audience was really good. They were up on their lore. They were up on the vampire stuff. There was a broad swath of people that liked different styles of vampires and recalled different styles of vampires and things that they liked and things they didn't like. The authors all tossed stuff out. There were a couple of people on our panel who weren't necessarily authors of vampire fiction, but were big fans of vampire fiction, so that all played into it very well. So we went from one end, the Bram Stoker, all the way through to Twilight vampires, and then at the tail end of that as well, we kind of did this galactic vampire, paranormal creatures as alien species thing, and that's kind of where the far end of the spectrum was, and of course that's where we play. So, anyways, that was very good. After that panel, I had a couple of more things. I got some dinner and thinking about running back over for the midnight stuff. If not, I've got stuff tomorrow morning to do, a coffee clutch and a couple of other panels. And then LibertyCon will be over by the middle part of the afternoon for me. So anyways, having a great time, meeting some people, networking. LibertyCon definitely worth it. If you can hop in there with a limited membership, you should probably do it one year. I will talk to you later, man. Have a good one. Night, night. Oh, there's my camera. Night, night. Ooh, look at that giant hand. Ooh. Hey there, hi there, ho there. Final report from LibertyCon. So the convention's over. I had a good closing out ceremony about 3 o'clock. That was kind of cool. So my final day, I went to the Cafe Clatch, which was supposed to be kind of a room set aside. They had coffee and they had a bunch of tables, and you were supposed to be able to sit down with your favorite author and talk. The downside of that arrangement was that every table was filled with authors. There were like 6 seats at a table, and there were 6 authors at a table. So anybody that showed up to talk to authors, unless they walked up and tapped them on the shoulder, there was no place for them to sit and talk. So, I suggested that maybe they break that marshal it into sign-ups for the authors, and then maybe split it in half so that there'd be 3 seats at the table available for people to actually sit down and talk to authors instead of 5 or 6 authors talking amongst themselves, looking expectantly over their shoulder for someone to stop by the table who was not going to stop by because there were 5 authors there. Anyways, that was probably the only thing I had an actual comment out of, that there was maybe could have done just a little differently. There was someone going to reply to me at the thing. I don't know what was going on. Maybe there was some sort of logistical problem. But anyways, so I just kind of bowed out of that really quick, walking around. Ran into a couple of people, so I'll diverge from discussing the schedule. Interesting. Had a fan of the book come and start talking to me about it, which was great. And they started talking about specifics, which was even better. And then kind of took the specifics they were talking about and moved them into more of an esoteric kind of big picture thing. And of course, when you're watching them, they're so happy about this chance to talk to you about this thing they've distilled down. And I mean, I didn't say it, but I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I just wrote that because it was really cool, and Morgan wrote that because it was cool, and then we just kind of blended them together and it came out cool. But they saw a deeper meaning to it, and then when I go back and think about it, it's like, man, you can definitely see that as a deeper meaning than just these 2 goofballs writing the story that just seemed cool to them. So that was neat. I met a couple of people, did some signings, and talked to them about some future projects. One of the things that came out of that is that Morgan and I have to get off our butts and finish writing this. The expectation and the longing for the book, when you're looking someone right in the eye and they're asking you about when the next one's out because they're really excited still about the first one, even though it's been out for a while, you got to do it. You got to get it done. So I'll be beating Morgan up, and he'll be beating me up, and we'll get the schedule lined out and get this thing finished up. So interesting. The second thing I went to was a creature feature. It's the Worlds of Bubba, the Monster Hunter. These are not the Monster Hunter International books, so that was kind of cool. John Hartness did the presentation. He's a good old boy, and his character is a good old boy. So it was my introduction to this other alternate Monster Hunter universe that does not involve the Correa or the game. So that's kind of cool. Interesting character. Had a good time sitting on that panel. And I could tell that the fans that were in the group were really into it because they were discussing certain aspects of how the stories have gone along. I liked what he did. He took a bunch of short stories and marshaled them together into what he called a season. And each season had an overall arc amongst the short stories, kind of like episodic. And then he actually has what he calls 3 seasons worth of writing for the series, the Bubba series. Very cool concept at the way he's executing it, having guest authors come in and do their thing too. So that was kind of a cool way to look at it. Next, I went to the Art of Editing. I really liked that class or that panel. A couple of guys from Bain, a couple of guys that were independent. The submittals, the review process, how they give feedback, how a professional editor gives feedback, the levels of editing from proofreading to story building to the actual just final edit. This was all good stuff. It was good stuff to listen to. Tells me to kind of pick and choose who I'm going to do for different aspects of the edit because it'll for us it's out of pocket. We're not part of a big company. And on the other hand, I also look at this. I understand that why it takes so long for a large company to produce a book, but in the end, even with the editing process taking as long as it does, before that even there's the profit motive to determine if your book's going to fit their profit model. So now you've got all that time plus that extra time. So I seriously doubt I'll ever end up in a big house. If the right one came knocking, I'd be smiling. But for the most part, I don't see us being able to extend our effort into the big houses. It is what it is. Anyways, great panel. I skipped the next hour, and then we went to a Kickstarter, Patreon, and World Fund crowdfunding seminar, which was great. Mitch Faust, who does a lot of art, and I actually sat through 3 of his panels this time, so he's a great guy. They talked about how to do Patreon and what they were doing with the Kickstarters, and a lot of good messaging. I took a lot of good notes on Kickstarter, especially since I'm considering a comic edition at some point in time for some of the short stories that could actually be physically put into a graphic novel, because I can do art now with my Poser program. I'm getting better and better at it. They gave a lot of great points about that. They talked a little bit about Patreon, and then I tossed out how to do a Patreon on your own website so you're not at the mercy of the platform that on any day of the week can just decide you're not going to get a paycheck anymore. And there were a few people in the audience really interested in about that. A few of them tracked me down afterwards. I showed them some of the plugins they can get. I am not going to start that as a side business, helping people set this thing up. So get that out of your head right now. If you're going to learn this business, you got to learn all aspects of it, and you can't just farm it out. You can get a little goodwill from people, but running people's WordPress pages, I don't have the time for the stuff I'm doing right now. I can point you a direction, but I'm not going to take over your WordPress Patreon-based site. So then there was a closing ceremonies, really cool. Got the dates for next year. I've already got it showing because I over-purchased the ticket, so I don't have to worry about buying it. I think it's going to be a free-for-all buying tickets. It'd be really cool if next year at about this time, the tickets go on sale in a couple of weeks. So you got to make a decision about if you're going or not and buy a ticket. It'd be really cool to figure a way to get Morgan and Steph to one of these and let them see what goes on here. It's a great little convention. There are a ton of people and a ton of distributors presenters, and in the alley where they had the products. It was all good. It was so. Anyways, highly recommend it. It's hard to get into now. It's going to get harder over time as it becomes more popular. But had a great time at LibertyCon. Totally worth the effort. All right. Don't see any questions popping up in the comments. If you have a question, I'm going to give you the count of 10 to pop it into the comment. And if you don't want to comment, then I'm just going to say adios, probably go have some dinner, watch a little TV, and get ready for my flight tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, you guys, have a good one. I had a great time and look forward to seeing everybody when I get home. Later. Hi, coming at you from LibertyCon. I had a pretty good first day. It was all good. Went to the cover art illustration panel. Pretty much what I expected, which was still really good. They talked about when authors set up the original cover art, they need to be explained really well, and they probably should have a contract in place. and give the author or the artist the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the artwork. However, it's what you can afford and who you can afford. The next panel was really good. Tropes of modern urban fantasy. Tropes are tropes for a reason. It's because people expect them and they work. But the real plus is that when you can twist the trope and add your own little spin on it, that's when you start having success. The panel was pretty good. I will say this, that authors on panels need to spend a little less time explaining how clever they were. And it isn't this specific panel. It's kind of coming across on all the panels. Explaining how clever they are in this thing that they've done in this particular book that people don't really have a reference point on. So they don't get how clever you are, even though you're being clever. So I think that you need to take it off of the 1,000 foot or the 100 foot level and kind of knock it up to about 10,000 feet so that people can relate to it, especially people that haven't read the work. So I think that's more enticing. But anyways, the urban fantasy tropes were pretty good, and they covered the gambit. Urban fantasy is urban fantasy. I went on to another panel called Creating Independent Comics. That was interesting. The processes and the methods involved in creating an independent comic, the stuff that's out there and the amount of time involved, and then the fact that Kickstarter has become the de facto place for new artists and new comic book originators to begin their projects. A message received loud and clear, which is don't put your project on Kickstarter for a comic book or necessarily even a book unless it's done. So it's ready to, the last thing you're waiting for is to deliver the product and have it printed out and all those other good things as the Kickstarter closes in and you've hit your number. All of the presenters had talked about even being participants in a Kickstarter where the concept was great, the initial artwork was great, but the book obviously wasn't done. So, they'd given their $10 or $15 or $25 and were months later still waiting for the book to be finished so that then it could go to print and get to them. So, key message especially on a Kickstarter thing, is have the initial product ready and ready to roll out in numbers at the close of your Kickstarter. I went to the Michael Z. Williamson, his 9,000 Years of Edged Weapons, really good. He had just the tables full of his collection, and just a lot of very cool and kind of unique artifacts. And he went from everything from obsidian axe heads, all the way up through the more modern weapons and reproductions of those weapons. And it was obvious there were a number of people in the audience that were smiths and craftsmen as well, because so the back and forth was really pretty interesting. And it's great that a guy out there does that amount of research, so that way that what he writes is genuine. And it's cool to learn that sort of stuff, so what you write is genuine. So very cool. Hopped out of that class and went to the opening ceremonies, which I have pictures of. Very cool. Great turnout. So LibertyCon's been pretty cool for that. After that, I went to Canon Publishing's seminar. Just kind of met their authors, what projects they were doing. There was a lot of interest in it. So it was kind of neat. I originally wanted to go to the Future of War with Michael Williamson, but I ducked into the Canon Publishing. After that, of course, I went to the Nor Fatale, which is a great book, great anthology, and went to that actual presentation. Won a book, yay! Got it signed by the people that were there, the authors that were there. It was a great round table. It was fun to be at. The last thing I was going to do was creating a cover copy, which was one of the subclasses. But I was just tired and hungry because I hadn't eaten since breakfast. So headed over to the City Cafe. And by the way, if you're ever in Chattanooga, go to the City Cafe. Just awesome food, kind of all home cooked. I still have in my fridge a piece of pie. I started last night. I may get another third of it done tonight if I have it as a snack, but it's just giant, and the prices are great, and the staff's been helpful. And that's the other thing. I stayed at the Days Inn instead of the Marriott, save a little money, but the staff at the Days Inn, the hotel's clean, the staff's great, the food is good at the restaurant that's attached to it. So, and I mean, it's literally 200 yards up the road from Marriott, so it's not a bad way to go. So tomorrow, starting bright and early, my schedule. Tomorrow is Tom Kenny Day. I mean, I have a lot going on. I'm going to go to a resource panel on indie authors. Then I'm going to do a reading with April Freeman she's going to do 30 minutes. I'm going to do 30 minutes, 25 and 25. I mean, they don't give you the whole hour. I'm thinking about reading Blood of NVIDIA, part of it, and part of Patched. And then I go to Author Alley, which I do a whole layout thing and sell some books, hopefully. And then after that, I go to a meet and greet with John Ringo, and then right back into Author Alley, which is another, a chance to sell more books. And then my first panel that day tomorrow is writing with a co-author, which I kind of wish I could zing Morgan in on the FaceTime, but their internet over there is kind of dicey. So I guess I'll just have to record the portion that I can record. But anyways, it'll be a panel with people that have written with co-authors and their unique perspectives. The next thing I should be going to, unless I'm really tired, is the good, bad, and ugly of writing advice. May not be able to go. And then there's Rise of the Fae, which is a big thing about kind of urban fantasy and high fantasy, and the Fae as a general subject. And then my next panel is at 6 o'clock, which is the 500 Vampires, No Waiting. I'm looking forward to that panel because Declan Finn, who's going to moderate, has been able to put together a group of authors that have written vampires in their various kind of stages and formats, all the way from the Bram Stoker style vampire through the modern urban fantasy, right to the edge where Morgan and I wrote our book, which was that vampires were an alien species, not your average paranormal, and how that affected it. So it's going to be a really broad panel, and I think some of the questions are going to be pretty cool, so that's going to be fun. And after that, I'm going to go to a couple of more readings from some different authors, and hopefully come some of the semi-after party. The after party at LibertyCon is to go to the gaming room and get involved in a game of D&D. That's your after party, which is kind of cool. I've never seen. I mean, I've been places where there's a lot of nerds here, and LibertyCon is actually kind of relatively heavy on the author, product manager side of works. Tony Weisskopf, of course, here from Bain. So there's a lot of that crowd in there. I mean, if you look at the list of authors that are here and presenting, it's a big list, but they give us a lot of leeway. And then there's still a lot of fans here kind of walking around being the crazy nerds that they are. So having a good time so far. Gonna have an early breakfast tomorrow and then head on over to the rest of the presentation. So anyways, any questions or whatever, go ahead and message me, or you can actually comment below this live video and I will answer them. LibertyCon has been totally worth it so far, and can't wait to go to my next one. Later.